Pardon me, good sir.
Oh yeah, what's up, man? What's up?
Oh, I wonder if you may perhaps purvey ladies of the night for sexual services?
Oh yeah, what you looking for, man?
I was wondering if perhaps there's a lady who could provide me some fallacious services?
Oh, you looking for a chick to butter your pancakes?
That sounds more like it could be an analingus type of service.
Oh, you mean chop your broccoli? Yeah.
Hey, that sounds much like a cunnilingus.
No, man, you're talking about glaze your ham. Yeah, I got that.
No, could I perhaps just, have some sexual intercourse in the missionary position?
Man, you're a fucking freak, but alright, I'll hook you up.
Oh, yes, very good. By the way, sir, you're under arrest.
Oh, shit!
Hello, and welcome to Neckbeard Nation. I am Buck. That right over there is Matt. This is a show where we discuss neckbeard stuff in a neckbeard-like manner for other neckbeards and neckbeard-interested people.
Like beards.
Like beards.
Anybody, but yeah.
Wherever you may have a beard, this show's for you.
Toe beard.
Toe man. Nose beard.
You're good.
Yeah. Anywho, this is my goblet of pop. That is Matt's hat of the day. And today we're discussing whores.
Well, prostitution.
Yes. As we have learned in our study for this show, whores only does refer to the female of the prostitution species. I would say that I would refer to it as either, but apparently the dictionary definition is female.
Well, we'll do whores and man whores. There you go.
Whores and man whores, although we don't have too much material on the man whore.
Yeah.
So let's get that out of the way. Man whores exist, and now let's talk about chicks.
Well, yeah, I think it's worth noting that most prostitution is female.
Yes.
And the male prostitutes usually cater to other men. I mean, I think that's by and large the vast majority of prostitution. So we're probably going to be talking mainly about females in this one.
Yes. And of course, we like to have our little histories on this program, and what better subject to do that with than the world's oldest profession, prostitution. Of course, it goes back even to times when we were barely human beings. I'm sure, people were doing all sorts of lovely stuff for sex all throughout the ages.
Yeah, I mean, I think even bonobos do that now.
Yes, there are ape whores.
Yeah.
So it is a trans-species and a trans-historical phenomena. The rationale behind that does make it appear to be something genetic, in that the male spread seed to all sorts of willing acceptors, and the females have the strategy where they can take something from the male for the intercourse. And, there's a lot of material on that, but we're now going to continue on with our history into ancient Greece, and you have an interesting tale from ancient Greece about a particular whore.
Yeah, I have a book called History Laid Bare. It's actually right there if you guys can notice. I was just reading through it, and there was a couple of interesting stories. I believe it was ancient Greece or Rome, kind of fuzzy on that, but there was a couple stories in there that were interesting to me, and I just felt like sharing them. One was that I believe when archaeologists were digging up a site, they found these footprints you know, however, I don't know how it was preserved, but they found these footprints, and it was of a sandaled foot that said, "Follow me" on it. And they kind of worked out that it was a prostitute. It was in, like, the prostitute district of the city. And they worked out that it was a prostitute, and that's how she would lead suitors, or whatever you want to call them, to her establishment. It was pretty neat. And then another story that I heard in there was that they weren't as, I guess, protective of underage people then, or it was a different society. So there's this one of the most famous prostitutes in this one town that was documented in, I don't know if it was manuscripts or what, but was under a young woman. I think they said she was maybe 12 or 13, and then their law then was if you were underage, you could have sex, but you could not have vaginal sex. That was only for old enough people. So she was a famous prostitute in this prostitute district for her anal sex, and she had many clients and was renowned in the area. And it was like a huge celebration when she finally became of age and was able to have vaginal sex. And I guess it was like the whole town rejoiced and was excited. It was in the manuscripts. Like, everybody was so happy. So it's pretty crazy to think about, you know.
People have been counting down to chick's 18th or whatever the age of consent was back then, birthday for ever.
Yeah,
it would seem.
Still doing it now.
Yeah, and it's certainly there's plenty to say about what age of consent should be, but that's another show. So from there you go on into biblical times, and of course Jesus hangs out with whores in the New Testament. Since I was never a Christian, I don't really remember that part. You remember that part?
Yeah, I don't. Was it Magdalene or something?
Mary Magdalene was the one that he was supposed to be with.
Oh, no. I remember, like, he washed her feet.
Yes.
The prostitute's feet, but I don't know her name, or I don't know why he was hanging out with her, you know? It's just, I don't really know.
Yeah, well, the prostitutes were just some of the sort of lower elements of society that he was trying to fraternize with.
Yeah, the lepers, and like, he's a cool guy, you know, kissing babies over here,
right,
washing feet over here.
Absolutely. And, you know, encouraging people to go to war in his name. Wait, he never did that.
Yeah, I think he did. But didn't she, like, follow him or become some type of, like, some sort of apostle? Not an actual apostle, but I thought she was, like, in his posse. I don't know. I don't know the whole story, but maybe somebody else does. You could let us know.
Christian shit. So we move on from there, and certainly there was prostitution, although very, very frowned upon in Europe during the Middle Ages and up through Renaissance times. But it did hang on a lot stronger in Asia with geisha culture. If there's some debate whether you could call that prostitution or not, but you know there are many cases where it did end up in the fucking. Yeah.
Well, I wonder why. Maybe it just wasn't documented as much in the Middle Ages, or maybe it's just a society where you could just grab anyone and rape them and get away with it. So, like,
oh yeah, you can get away with anything in the Middle Ages.
Yeah, you know? I mean, I'm not sure why. I mean, I'm sure it was happening. It's just, I wonder what factors played.
Well, yeah, it was just such a strongly religious time. Yeah. Probably was more, had to be more underground.
Yeah.
And so we go on from there to really where whores make sort of their coming of age, where they are publicized once again, and you come to this Victorian era and the Moulin Rouge era, and you have some burlesque coming out at the turn of the 20th century.
Well, actually, I'm not sure the exact time period, but I wanted to touch on something. I think it was probably more the Renaissance era, but of the link to women trimming their pubic hair. Like, did you know anything about that?
They still do.
Yeah, but it's from my understanding, it started, I think, I'm probably getting the era wrong, but it was sometime around, like, the Renaissance, it started with prostitutes and like, you know, like the harbor towns were like a big place for prostitution because guys who would be on the sea would come and they'd be lonely. So I believe it started in like the French harbor towns. The process of whatever shaving your pubic hair, and I think part of it might have tied into maybe disease.
Absolutely.
Or bugs. It was probably the reason why it started, but then it also has been somewhat linked to a woman looking younger, I guess. It became a trend then, is what I'm trying to
Yeah,
say.
no, that coincides with the era of the powdered wig, which was done as, you know, a flea and lice protection. So I can see how that and perhaps a merkin in the place there would, you know, have a similar sort of benefit.
Yeah, I'd imagine that's why it started, and then it just it became this whole trend. So I'm just trying to, I don't know, tie it in to where like people are still doing it nowadays. But it basically started with prostitution, is my understanding.
Yes. I'm sure, you know, these things have murky origins often. So we move on from there to sort of the bawdy eras of the 20s speakeasies and lots of free flowing liquor and sex and, you know, the beginnings of sort of a cohesive sexual industry. And move on from there into where the sexual industry is very kept down in the 50s. And then experimentation runs rampant in the 60s. And
but was it? Do you know if it was outlawed? At what point it was outlawed, or
it was always outlawed?
Okay. So basically, ever since the founding of America, probably.
Yes. Well, I mean, it was outlawed in, I'm sure it's a lot of ancient societies as well.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's a very old thing to outlaw prostitution.
And it should be.
I don't think anywhere in the United States was it legal until Nevada.
And we're trying to discuss this earlier, but what is it? Did we decide whether it's directly linked to religion or as a basis of the outlaw, or is it?
I don't necessarily think it's always. It is often, and certainly that is an element. But for the similar reason you have these age of consent laws, there's a lot of protectionary reasons you could institute such laws, especially concerning, you know, the place, manner, and time of the prostitution. And, you know, if, like the girl who could only take it in the ass, you know, stuff like that, I'm sure had been around forever.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just wondering if anybody knows of a direct link to why they're outlawed as far as religion. I'm guessing it obviously has something to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, there's obvious ties to the lack of sexual promiscuity allowed in most major religions. So, you know, it comes from that sort of angle, in part, at least. So, now we go to what is happening today, where prostitution is legal, and where it's not legal, but it's happening, and what the ramifications of such things are. Of course, here in the U.S., you have to go to Nevada. You go to Vegas, you go to a bunny ranch, you go to a nice bordello, you get yourself the pick of the litter.
Yeah, you were saying when you were there, you'd just be walking down the strip and people would just be handing you cards.
Yeah, on the street corners, Mexicans have their stack of naked chick pics, and they're oh, take.
I wonder how many times you actually got the girl on the card, though. If you
no, you don't get the girl on the card. You get some 60-year-old fat Mexican maid, I'm sure.
I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, everyone's sexual preferences are, you know, yada yada yada. Lo siento. So, once from there is, you know, a lot of infrastructure that is in place for their industry there's testing, there's monitoring of the females, and there's a lot of laws concerning their protection. For instance, you have to have your dick checked at the prostitution place of business for various diseases.
Yeah. I'm sure the girls are trained on how to spot things like that. Because I've seen a couple documentaries on it. It's, from what I saw, it was the girls who actually check.
Yeah, they get to play nurse. And
if anybody knows penises, I'm guessing the prostitute is pretty good at spotting things like that.
Yes, yes. That's interesting. No. Anyways, so yeah, in the U.S., it's just sort of that one outlier. Internationally, the Netherlands, of course, is known for its very open and tolerant attitudes for everything, but particularly prostitution. There are wide open prostitution shops all throughout the country, and you can just go in and, you know, they have the same sort of ground rules that you get in Nevada, and you get a nice Romanian hooker, and there you go. Who doesn't want to fuck a Romanian?
How many times have you been there, Buck?
I have only been through the airport of the Netherlands. And I never.
Sure, you could tell us, man.
I can go through every country I've been to.
No. I meant how many times you actually seen a prostitute?
No, well, I mean, I've been to Vegas 10 times, so I think that's equivalent.
Okay. We don't need the sordid details, okay?
No sordid details. Just, you know, if you haven't been to Las Vegas, I highly recommend it, especially if you're the type of person who likes seeing hot chicks not wearing much. It's a good place for that. So we go on from there to Thailand, where people tend to go for underage sexual intercourse.
Well, not just that, but I mean, there's the lady boys and everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's totally rampant everywhere, you know?
Yeah. And so, yeah, there's a lot of sex tourism to places like Thailand, places like Brazil, where, you know, you can find these impoverished neighborhoods and, you know, get yourself whatever. Yeah. Also, India, there's a lot of that. So, you know, that brings up one of the issues that people bring against prostitution, and that's sexual slavery. And there's a lot of human trafficking that goes on.
Which is so crazy to think about, man. Yeah. In this day and age, like, oh God,
Well, my personal story with the issue is I lived in Toledo, Ohio for 3 years, and that is one of our nation's capitals of sex trafficking.
Really?
Weirdly enough.
It's amazing that it could happen in a first world country, man. It just
Absolutely.
Boggles. I don't know.
Well, what they would do is they would come from third world countries.
Oh yeah, and get kind of tricked, and I heard about this. So they'll take everything. They'll take their passport and everything, kind of trick them into it. But it's just crazy, man.
Yeah, and certainly that is, a reason that people have posted against prostitution. But I think...
which it doesn't really make sense to me, because they're already doing it right now.
Right.
So...
right.
If you legalized it...
Yeah.
And you make a resource that people can go to legally, you kind of take away the power from these people who have a monopoly on the market illegally. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah, and we were discussing today what our positions are on this issue, and there's a fair amount of agreement that I will state for myself is that prostitution should be universally legalized and monitored and protected. You need to protect the males, the females. You need to protect people from disease. You need to protect them from pimps. And you need to make sure that, this basic human need is able to be taken care of. I certainly remember in one of those documentaries you were talking about, there's this guy in a wheelchair, and he had a whole bunch of medical issues, but no diseases or anything. But he's like, I can't, get a chick to fuck.
Yeah.
And so it's a really necessary service for some people that can't get it on their own for legitimate reasons, not just because you're a weirdo.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I would like to look at it as what's the reasons not to do it. And I was trying to say before, is like, the biggest reason I could think is if you're religious for some odd reason. They're going for the one man, one woman, no adultery thing, But that's the biggest reason I could find. If we're not religious, which our government shouldn't be, mm-hmm. then they shouldn't base these decisions on anything religious, which it seems like is sort of happening. So what would be a secular reason not to have legal prostitution? I guess it would be disease.
Mm-hmm.
I mean...
Yeah, disease, sort of mental scarring, perhaps. I don't think that would hold up.
Yeah.
People worried about the trafficking, that sort of thing. But I think in a well-regulated system, the outcomes have turned out to be very positive.
Yeah, I mean, you could tax it. You could, when it's controlled. Yeah. You have control over it, It's, I don't know.
Right. See our episode someday on drugs for more on that. So that is our show for the day. We are really killing it on the Twitter recently. I'd like to thank all of those new followers. I'd like to thank anyone who's subscribing on the YouTube. I like to say that our show is going swimmingly, and we'll be adding more to the channel soon, including perhaps a midweek episode from me on a mini topic. And for Matt, this is Buck, and I say adieu.
Thanks, guys. I'm going to go check out Backpages now and check out some prostitutes, all right? Have a good day.